Today we're going to answer the good old question of, is it better to have states, territories, or trade companies? In this video we'll be discussing the benefits of states as well as the benefits of trade companies and which one is better to have or how to best balance the two available options. The first topic we're going to take on is, should you make states or territories out of your provinces? Well, that is a very easy question. You should always make full states out of as many provinces as you can, as long as you don't go over your governing capacity by too much. What I mean by too much is 1,000 over governing capacity gives you around 66% advisor cost increase, core creation cost increase, and so on, but it is still manageable. I would recommend not to go 1,000 over your governing capacity unless you're going for a world conquest, but in general try to keep as many states as your governing capacity allows you to. Territories are absolutely garbage. You don't want to have territories, and whenever you cannot make a full state out of a province, you should turn it into a trade company. But before we go into that topic, you need to know that you can only make trade companies out of provinces that do not belong to the same subcontinent as your capital city. So what I mean by that is, my capital city here is in Den Haag, which means that every single province within the Western Europe subcontinent, which is where Den Haag is, cannot be made into a trade company. That means all of France here, despite being territories, I cannot make these provinces trade companies. However, provinces in Anatolia and the Balkans I can make, as they are part of a different subcontinent, so I can get all the benefits from trade companies. As a consequence, it is recommended that whatever provinces you have that belong to your main subcontinent should be made into full states, as long as you have the governing capacity, which I don't have, which is why I'm not making these into full states right now. So what are the benefits of full states, you ask? Well, a full state means that you can have your autonomy as low as 0%, which means you're getting 100% trade power from that province, 100% production efficiency, tax modifier, manpower, and so on. When it comes to territories, you can only get 10% as a base from your provinces. So despite La Marche or Limousin having 8 development and offering a lot of goodies, I can only get 10% of those goodies because it's not a full state. You could potentially lower the autonomy that you get in your territories by going full expansion, which lowers it by 10%, as well as by taking the government reform that lowers it another 10%, and by building the state house, which lowers it by another 5%. However, that means we can bring this down to 65% minimum autonomy, which means that we're only getting 35% of everything within this province, which is not too much. We want to get 100% from these provinces. Another thing to keep in mind is that within states, you can also have full cores, which means that even if you lose this province, you still have the core to reconquer the province later on, whilst in territories, you cannot have a full core, which means if you lose this province in a war, you don't have a core to reconquer the province. Even more so, you get edicts in your full states, which means that you get the benefits that the edicts offer that include institution spread, monthly autonomy change, defensiveness, local development costs, local manpower modifier, trade power by 50%. This is extremely powerful, especially in main trade centers, and missionary strength +1. Do take note, however, that you have a maintenance cost within your states, and this ramps up based on the fact that you have or you don't have an edict, as edicts increase your base cost by 200%. So as you saw, from 1.68 it went down to 0.56 by canceling the edict. That's a big difference. So to settle this once and for all, make every single province you have a full state within your main subcontinent, as well as a full state outside of your main subcontinent if the provinces give you a lot of bonuses, such as a lot of income or manpower, or if they are gold mines, since you want to have 0 autonomy in gold mines so you can get the full benefit from that gold mine. Also be careful not to have it depleted. Outside of your subcontinent, everything else that is not worth having as a state should be a trade company. Now let's discuss our trade companies a little bit. As you can see, pretty much everything outside of my main subcontinent, with the exception of a few either gold or really high development provinces, are trade companies. Each one of these trade companies, once it reaches above 50% trade power in a particular trade node, gives me 1 extra merchant, which means that I have 17 merchants, majority of which from the trade companies. This is extremely important as it allows me, because of the extra merchants, to filter in trade and direct it towards my main trade nodes, thus getting a lot of income simply from trade. A trade company is formed based off of provinces within a certain trade area outside of your main subcontinent. That means the the subcontinent where your capital is in. So everything outside of Western Europe for me is part of a trade company. That means a trade company in Safi, Tunis, Alexandria, Aleppo, Constantinople, Ragusa, Crimea, and so on, multiple trade companies around the world, most of which already give me a merchant or will be giving me a merchant pretty soon. Aside from the really great merchant, trade companies are really important as they turn an otherwise useless territorial province into a really valuable province. That is because of the buildings that they offer. Once you have the cash for it, you should definitely invest your money in these amazing buildings, which are available from the very start as long as you have the cash to invest in these trade company investments. These are divided in 5 different building types. First off is the company garrison, which increases your defensiveness and supply modifier, doubles it with the second building, and with the third building offers you a +5 land force limit for the whole country. +5 land force limit for 1,000 ducats is actually really great if you really need the land force limit. The harbor offers you production efficiency increase +25 and 50% with the second building upgrade, and local trade power +2 and 4 with the second building, as well as naval force limit +5 once you invest in the admiralty. The local ventures offers local production efficiency +50% and goods produced +0.30 or half of that for the first building, and trade steering +50%. The trade steering in a trade region such as Alexandria or Aleppo means that you can move more income outside of this trade area into the areas where you want the trade to be. So you want to build the trade steering buildings exactly in the trade nodes that connect Asia to Europe, such as the 4 main trade nodes in this area. The foreign influence buildings include tax modifier and dev cost reduction up to -15% dev cost reduction, which is even better than having a state with an edict of encouraging development. The tax modifier is kind of trash though. And if you build a township, you get yearly army tradition +0.03 flat, which means if you have enough of these buildings, you can have a lot of army tradition monthly, and trade value +10%. Last but not least, the governance increases your manpower and sailors by up to 100%, as well as can give you marine force limit +2%. That means 2% of your land force limit can be turned into marines, and of course you can stack up these buildings if you want to. It also lowers the local autonomy by 5%. Do take note, however, that once you build one of these buildings, you cannot build any of the other 4 third-tier special investments. So for example, because I built a township, I cannot build the admiralty, officers mess, property appraiser, or general mansion. Just to make this extra clear, everything that you have as a territory outside of your main subcontinent should be a trade company, unless you have the extra governing capacity to make it a full state. And once it is a trade company, make sure you build the right buildings in it. Trade steering is the most important of all the tier 3 buildings here, and make sure you build it in trade nodes which connect important trade nodes to each other. A side note I will have to add to this guide is that a great way of lowering your governing capacity is building courthouses and the upgraded town hall, which lowers by 50% the governing cost as well as the maintenance of the state, and mix that in with state houses, which lowers it by another 20%, meaning that you get up to -70% governing cost in provinces, which means instead of 29 for a 29 development province, it would cost you roughly around 10 governing capacity cost.